So, welcome everyone to our Get Another session with Little Leaps. We are celebrating Dashera in India today, and I know many of you are taking time out from your family festivities to join us. So, thank you. And I am thrilled to introduce you to our special guest of today, a renowned author. I am sure many of you must be knowing her already. She is an expert in early childhood development through the Montessori approach. So let's welcome Simone Davies here. Simone
Thank
is,
you so much for having me.
yeah, welcome Simone. And Simone is the author of The Montessori Toddler, and she has co authored The Montessori Baby and The Montessori Child, amazing guides for raising children using Montessori principles. She has 20 years of experience as an AMI certified Montessori educator. She runs parent-child Montessori classes at Jacaranda Tree Montessori in Amsterdam. She also shares her expertise with parents and educators worldwide through her blog, Instagram, and podcast, The Montessori Notebook. As a mother of two young adults, Simone brings both practical knowledge and personal experience, and we are honored to have her here to share her insights with our community today. So, Simone, I am really happy and excited to have you here at our platform. I would like to know, you have over 15 years of experience as a Montessori educator, isn't it? So, how did you become involved and what sparked you to want to become a teacher?
Yeah, so it's actually now over 20 years since I discovered Montessori because I, like many of you, found Montessori when I was looking for a school for my own children. And now Oliver and Emma are 23 and 22. And so when I walked into a Montessori classroom to see it on an open day, my eyes were just wide open because I'm like, what a beautifully prepared environment where the children can explore at their own pace. And if they take so much care preparing the environment, imagine how much care they take of my children. And then on this open day as well, they were so respectful to us and to our children, the way that they spoke, they were guides, they weren't teachers, they were dressed in very approachable clothing rather than very formal. And I just really felt like, this feels like a home. And now, and the more you learn about Montessori and you hear that Dr. Montessori called her first classrooms the Casa de Bambini, the house of children, you're like, oh, that totally makes sense. And so I started going to a Montessori playgroup myself with my son when he was a year and a half old. And it wasn't long after before the owner of the playgroup said, oh, have you ever thought about doing Montessori training? And so she dropped this little seed. And yeah, it wasn't long. In 2004, I did my AMI 0 to 3 training. And it was so fun because I got to put it into practice with my own children. But then it became my profession. I had no idea. I thought it might be fun to do while my children were small. And then, yeah, 20 years later, and I've been running my own classes since 2008. These parent-child classes in Amsterdam, which I still love and adore. So that's how I started in Montessori. And it starts just with the child, and then you realize how much you're changing through the process. And then I think the most beautiful part is that you realize you can practice Montessori with everyone, also other adults, friends, family, but also your neighbors and the people that you meet in the stores and things like that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's so self-reflecting that you become a different person altogether in this journey of becoming a Montessori educator. So, Simone, that's about you becoming a Montessori teacher and exploring this world. But you are also an author. So, what inspired you to write books? What motivated you?
I still don't really embrace the word author so well. I kind of think I'm just a Montessori teacher who wrote some books because, but I did get to write these beautiful books. And how it started was, as I said, I was running these parent-child programs, and I still do. And parents are always asking, "Oh, what book should I read about Montessori?" And so I would tell them, "Okay, well, you can read this book, and that will tell you a bit about this, and you can read this book, and that'll have a little bit of that, and ignore that chapter though, because I don't really feel like that really reflects Montessori, because it might be a parenting book and that kind of thing." Anyway, one day I decided that actually maybe we need to put together like a guide book, like all the things that I could write about Montessori in one book. And I was going to make it general about Montessori, and then I ran a workshop about Montessori for toddlers, and like 70 people had signed up in like 24 hours. And I'm like, oh no, everyone needs to know more about toddlers, because it really mostly at that time, back in 2000, or what, yeah, 2015 or so, most people knew about Montessori more for the 3 to 6 year old child, and maybe elementary, but not so much about toddler, because a lot of them are still at home. So it was so fun to get to write the Montessori toddler, because these are my people. This is like the world that I live in every day, and all the questions that parents asked me about the troubles that they're having with their kids. And I really got to, just as I learned how to see through the eyes of the child through my Montessori training, I got to pass on that to children, to parents and families, and caregivers and grandparents and things like that through the Montessori toddler. And then after the Montessori toddler came out, everyone's like, but what about the babies? Like, how do we apply it for the first year? And Junifer Uzadike, is a Montessori educator in Nigeria, and she was in Amsterdam for the AMI board meetings. And I had invited her over to my house, because we knew each other through blogging, if she wanted to come for dinner. And I mentioned to her that I would love to write a book about babies, but because I had found out about Montessori when my kids were 1.5, I hadn't, of course, I'd helped many families bring Montessori principles into their home in the earliest, but I hadn't done the floor bed myself and those kind of things. And she's like, oh, I was on the aeroplane and I wanted to write a book about it, because she has now 4 children who were raised in a Montessori way, and she was trained in Montessori before her first child was born. So we decided to collaborate on the Montessori baby, and we pulled out a piece of paper and started sketching out the outline that night. And then COVID happened, and so we wrote that book during COVID, which was really fun, and lots of WhatsApp calls. And it was actually good because a lot of things slowed down during COVID, so we had time to write. And then Junifer's trained also for the 6 to 12, the 3 to 6 and 6 to 12. And so she asked if we would collaborate on writing the Montessori child. And my children were already then, young adults. So I had raised them with Montessori principles at home, and there hadn't been any guidebook, but I'd found out a lot in the process. So her with her training and working in the classroom, and me raising Montessori children at home. And we interviewed so many people as well, all of our favorite Montessori educators, on getting their wisdom, and then got to put together another guidebook of how to raise Montessori children now from 0 to 12 years. And even there's a bonus chapter in the Montessori child about adolescence, so that, you really have all of the age groups right through to 18 in those books.
No, that's fantastic. I have read the Montessori baby and the Montessori toddler, but I have yet to read the Montessori child. And I know your practical suggestions are so on point. Everything, I think it was so deeply researched, because you have covered everything possible, every query that a family and a parent would have, or an educator also for that matter, in classroom environment. Because when it comes to toileting, or when it comes to biting, or when it comes to disrespecting of their environment or people, grace and courtesy, these are the things that I think everybody struggles. It is not just the parents or the neighbors, or it's the entire community which has this kind of problem. So it's so well written that I was like, I think you have not left anything to add into it. So it's a fantastic work that you have done in those both the books. So and you have given a lot of practical takeaways over there, the strategies and what are things to be done, how the environment should look like. How many years did you take, and do you have any suggestions for those who want to write books, who are aspiring to become authors?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I sat on my bike for 2 years, but after I came up with the idea of wanting to write the Montessori toddler, to decide how I was going to write it and to put it into its structure. So there was a lot of time spent on my bike thinking about it. And then I realized, oh, okay, so you have the Montessori activities, and you have the prepared environment, setting up the home, and you have how we're going to parent them, raise them, depending on how your family looks. So there's kind of 3 sections, and I was mapping these all out in my head. And then for me, I just wrote this outline, and it was I wrote the outline in half an hour because it's ingrained in you after your Montessori training and working with families for so long. And I'd sat on my bike for 2 years thinking about it, that in half an hour I wrote the outline, and it's still really quite close to how I mapped it out that day. And so I know it's not for everyone like that. And I also did a large bulk of the writing in a holiday period. So I tend to not be able to write when I'm also running classes and things. It uses different parts of my brain. And so I was able to get away for 10 days, and I just wrote for 12 hours a day, and got a lot of the book written in the first draft of the Montessori toddler and I just didn't even pause. I just would write as if I was a parent in my class was asking me about biting, and I would just type exactly what I'd said like 50 times because everyone has had biting. And so I just write down everything that I would always tell them. And I just make my like little cross next to it saying, look up the reference for this. But I didn't kind of get bogged down with looking up all my references until later. I just really wanted it to flow out. And that's how I wrote the book. And I did it. I didn't have a publisher, and I didn't. Sometimes you can instead write an outline, and you can propose it to a publisher who will then, guide you through the writing process and everything. But it was just a very organic process. And a mother who came to my classes, Hiyoko Imai, she said, if you ever write a book, I'd love to illustrate it. And so she was the one who did the book design and the illustrations. And because we didn't have a publisher, we decided to put it out to Kickstarter to see if anyone would be interested. And I thought, if no one's interested in the book, then that's fine, because I have a really good parent program to use in my classes and that kind of thing. And then in the Kickstarter, in 30 days, we sold over 1,000 books. And so that was the birth. And I don't really have much advice, really, except to say what is important for you to say. Like, what is the thing that people ask you about all the time? What are the things people have questions about? And answer them. And honestly, the Montessori Child was the biggest one for collecting all the types of questions, because from 3 to 12 is a huge age gap, like a huge age span. And I just would make lists of questions that I heard people asking me, and then we just made sure we touched on all of them in the book. So it's also got a great index, so you can just open up to any page, or if you've got a problem, you can go to the index and go to there as well. So I think that would be what I would say, is like, write down the questions that everyone asks you about. So Madeira, you were saying that you were a software engineer, and if you ever wanted to write a book about software engineering, what are the types of questions that people ask you? Like, how did you get into software engineering? What is a way that software engineers look at the world differently than other people look at the world? And when you touch on those things, then yeah, it means that it's going to be a really useful resource for people.
Wow. And see, you had no plans and you had no idea whether your book will be sold, and you have international, global, readers. We all love your book. And in one of your books, you claim that toddlers are misunderstood, right? So why, and what are some crucial, things that you think that we all need to understand and learn about these young toddlers?
Yeah, I actually had a title on one of the pages that says toddlers are brilliant. And I Googled it to see if anyone else thought toddlers were brilliant. And there were zero search results. It was just like, no one thinks that. People always say that toddlers are difficult and they have tantrums. But actually, I think what I learned from my Montessori training, and Judy Orion was my trainer, and she just got us to realize how to see through the eyes of the toddler. What are they actually going through? What are they experiencing? How do they see the world? And that can be in the practical sense, in that how do they see your room in your home, so you can sit on the ground and literally see, oh yeah, no wonder they're pulling over that plant. It's the biggest thing in the room, and how can I make it less attractive to them? Or shall I put a chair in front of it so they can't pull it? Or do I need to cover the soil right now? And so that then I don't have to say no all the time. To see that they're just curious, they're discovering the world for the first time. So if they put something in their mouth, it's not because they're trying to be naughty, but it's how they're going to explore the world. And is it okay for them to put it in their mouth? Probably not at that age. And so we can show them what it's used for. And then you're usually more interested in what that use is. So if they're banging a glass on the wall, I can say, oh, you've got a glass. Can I show you what the glass is for? And so then I'm actually showing them, and they're curious, and then they're actually very engaged, and you give them a lot more responsibility. So they're also very capable. So as if we set things up for them to have success, then they really do it. Like, one of my favorite things in my classes is doing the food preparation part of our class. So we make our own snack, and every day we slice bananas. So we peel the bananas and then we slice them, and then we put them into a bowl and we keep it for our group snack. And I just always laugh because toddlers are in the present moment. So that means that they'll take off a piece of the peel, and instead of peeling the whole banana, a lot of them will get up after taking the first piece off, take it to the bin, and then sit back down. And their parents are like, oh, just leave it there. And you're like, that's their process. They just want to put it into the bin, and they don't care if it takes 3 times to get to the bin, because they're living in the present moment. They're wanting to master it themselves, and they're interested in everything from like the fine motor skills to the big movement, and they love to move. So I love in Montessori classrooms, they can get up and explore, and we have lots of ways that they can move their bodies as well. And that they're not trying to give you a hard time. I guess that's probably a big thing to know about toddlers too, is that yes, they might be being inefficient, or they might have, some big feelings, because unfortunately their brain isn't wired to like have impulse control at that stage. So they have to learn that. So they're going to get frustrated when you stop them doing something that they don't know about, like touching a hot stove or something. They're going to maybe cry and be upset. And, they're not trying to give you a hard time. They're just telling you, I don't know how this works yet. Please be my safe space while we calm down. So I guess they're some of the first things that I think about when I think, how can you see the toddler in a new way, and to see they're brilliant.
Yeah. This brings me to a very interesting question, and I think you will agree to this, that freedom and limits. When we are talking about toddlers, I think the first thing comes is, as you said, these toddlers are misunderstood and they are brilliant, right? So we must give them opportunities. Now, the problem lies is that we do not understand, and I've seen it in many cases where parents and even educators in a classroom environment find it very challenging to understand how much to, support, or how much to encourage, and how much to stop. When to stop, when to intervene and tell them, now, what, we have to do something else. So I'll give you an example. I see children in home environment where, nowadays parents have become more aware of giving freedom to young children. I've seen, parents allowing children to take crayons and scribble on the walls, on the floor, on their sofas, on the bed covers. And when somebody is saying, we can just make a, specific wall area for your baby to go and scribble over there, they're like, don't judge my child. The child wants to do it, let the child do. And then, this keeps increasing, this behavior, because children do not know where to stop. They need a safe space, but they also need guidelines, right? So I have seen this, and in a classroom environment, I have seen where many a times the educators stop the child when they are, for example, you're peeling, case where the child is peeling a banana, and then they peel one, they take off a peel, and then they go put in the compost, they come back, and then they take another, and then they go one by one, and then finally they open the banana, and then they eat it. Now, the first time this would have happened, and the educator would have gotten scared because this was supposed to be a community snack, right? But it went to one child's tummy. So the next time what they do is they do not allow the child, or sometimes they just let the child be. And even if the child is eating it every time they have to go for the food preparation, they are continuing to do that. So I want to understand, and I want you to explain this fine balance between this freedom and where to, intervene and tell the child that, we can do this in a different way, which we call
Yeah. I love that question. I think it will be really helpful for families as well at home. Because Montessori, some people think that the kids are allowed to do whatever they want, that they have free reign. And other people think that it's very strict in that they have to use materials in certain ways. And actually it's somewhere in the middle where we're this guide. And so we give them, as you say, freedom within limits. So freedom looks like, that they get to choose whichever activities that they want to play with, as long as they return them to the shelf, for example. So we don't just keep taking them out, because that's what they want to do. That would give them full freedom. But we also show them the responsibility that we put them back when we're finished, so it's available for the next person. We also don't take it off somebody else, for example, who is busy concentrating, because we want to preserve their concentration. And so we give them guidance like, you can have a turn, it will be available soon. And so we're there to be a kind and clear guide to keep them from interfering with someone else's work, and to be in a community as well. And so I guess the guidelines that I always use in my classroom is that herding someone else? Is it hurting themselves, or is it hurting the environment? And if they're doing any of those three, that's when I'll step in to stop that freedom. So for example, if they're hurting the environment, which for me would be drawing on walls, that's not okay in my classroom, then I would say, oh, here, we draw on the table. We draw on the table, like on the piece of paper on the table, and we take the paper to the table. So if someone's painting and they're painting all over these, I'll just point to the paper. It goes on the paper, and I'm telling them what I want them to do rather than what I don't want them to do. And if they have drawn on the walls, then I'll say, oh, it's not okay to draw on the walls. Let's go and get a cloth and some sponge and some soap, and we're going to wash the walls. And then even though a toddler probably can't wash the walls perfectly, they will maybe have a sponge, and I'll have a sponge, and we'll be cleaning it together. The one that was about bananas and then not letting them, again, it's giving the kind and clear guidance. Is like, we're cutting the bananas, we're holding it for friends. So then I might scaffold the skills. I might hold the banana on the board for them so they can't pick it up to their mouth, and then give them the knife so that, and then gradually over time, I won't need to hold the banana anymore. They'll be able to do it more and more themselves. And then if they eat them, I'll say, this is for our friends. Shall we give this to someone else who isn't so hungry? And I know it's hard to wait, and so they also learn, and sometimes I just give them one more try, but usually it goes straight into their mouth. I'm like, okay, no, you're definitely too hungry for this. And then I'm sorry, we'll try again next time. And so they know that they'll get a try again next time, and we'll keep scaffolding the skills. And it doesn't take that long before they actually do develop that inhibitory control that we were talking about earlier. And they resist. So I love this quote, and I think I've heard from, I don't know exactly the exact source, but it says, my freedom ends where yours begins. And I think that's so beautiful, because some people think of Montessori and think of independence, which is exactly right. We give the children a lot of independence, but it's also a child in community. And so we have to respect other people in our space. So if you're in a cafe, for example, and you go, oh, my kid can run around because I don't mind, give them all the freedom they want because they need to move. But actually, there's other people in the cafe and the restaurant that don't want children running around. So then that's about them learning to be in community. I see you need to move. So why don't we get up and we'll look at the chefs cooking in the kitchen? Or why don't we go outside and we'll count the cars that are going past, and then we'll come back when you're feeling like more settled. And then I always have like a bag of things that I'm going to use with these children as well. So I hope those are some useful examples of freedom within limits.
Yeah, definitely. So there is another question that sprouts from this is there any psychological implications or physical implications if we do not have the right balance between this freedom and limits for young children?
Well, I think that they're going to learn over time. Like when we don't have the balance, they're going to learn over time who has the balance or not. So for example, in a family, there might be, say it's a family that has a father and a mother, and there might be the father is the one who gives kind and clear guidance, and the mother is the one who maybe gets angry or lets them do whatever they want, but then gets angry. Then the child over time will learn. But we're also, I think it has to be one that they get the best results, and there's one parent who is having this freedom within limits approach. So even if not both parents are on the same page, trust that the child is absorbing this example, and they'll understand that you're the safe person to go to. And what I usually find over time is that when there's a respectful relationship also between the caregivers, and they discuss together what's going well, what's not going well, how can I support you, then actually they start to become a Montessori family, and you get more and more cooperation between the two parents as well. So it's only confusing for the child when we're not predictable. Some days, oh, okay, today I'm allowed to splash the water everywhere, but then the next day I'm not allowed to splash the water everywhere, and it's very confusing. So I always say, I know families are kind of resistant to the word consistent. So I like to say, be predictable so that they know. And if you're not sure, then you need to be clear so that the child can be clear. Because if you aren't clear what to do, they're also not going to be clear. So I think clarity and predictability gives security to the child. And I don't want to say what happens if it doesn't. It's just that we're always learning. We're always doing better. Like I know that when I first heard about Montessori, I was doing a lot for Oliver still. Like I was holding a bottle of water to his mouth while he was drinking, and he was a year old. Like you make mistakes, but you learn and you evolve, and you also show your children that you are learning and evolving as well. So I like to look at it as a positive thing. Like it's not what damage you're doing, but how actually we can learn to do better.
Yeah, that's very true, and I totally agree with you. And also I feel it's so important for parents to be on the same page. even though they may have different personalities and it might be conflicting at some point. But as you said, being consistent with their behaviors will give that predictability in children's, approach to reaching out to the parents in different situations. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Um, so here I would like, I mean, why this question was coming up is because many parents ask, my children are not listening to me and they are hitting and crying and, they are throwing things on people and they do everything to grab attention, right?
Mm.
Um, is this only because, as you said earlier, also, right, that children do not do all this because they are doing to irk us, to irritate us, or annoy us, isn't it? They are doing it because they want to exercise their muscles, but they don't know how to, right? So, how do you suggest parents to handle these kind of situations where they think that this child is literally, making me annoyed by yelling, crying, or throwing tantrums? So, what are your suggestions over there?
So we always say there's always a reason for this behavior. And so the best thing is to, as a Montessori educator at a family, is to observe. So I observe to try and get information. Why could they be yelling and screaming? And then we can look at the whole situation. Like, are they asking for connection? Have they learned this behavior because they see that it gets my attention? Is there a skill that I can teach them that will help them? So is that sometimes they're lacking the skill to, for example, when they're interrupting, I'm talking to my partner, I can encourage them to put their hand on my shoulder. And when they put their hand on my shoulder, that means that they have something really important to tell me. And I put my hand on their hand so that they know that I feel that they're waiting. And then when there's a pause in the conversation, I can say, oh, thank you for waiting. What did you need? And then if it's a bigger request, okay, I'll finish my conversation. I'll help you. Or maybe it's just that they need to reach something right in front of me that they couldn't get past, then I can help them and then they can go on. So again, it's information. How can I take this information and maybe set up the environment to help them? So again, say they interrupt a lot because they're looking for the scissors. Where are the scissors? Then, maybe then they come back, oh, I need sticky tape. I need sticky tape. We can actually, I noticed that they were interrupting me a lot, but I can also set these things up. My child's now, 4 years old. So why don't we set up a little station where they have scissors, where they have sticky tape, and I can get the environment to help me so that they can be more independent. When they're throwing things, like you said, it might be that they have a physical need that they need to use their muscles right now. But it's not okay to throw a big wooden toy. So can I set up a corner where I have some things that they can throw inside? So it might be, for example, those little bean bags, and you can make a target on the wall and they could throw at that on the wall. Or if they've got like all this kind of anger in their arms or some need to throw or bang, then you can bang on cushions as well. Or do I want to play the xylophone or make big music, or have a space in our house that's set up with a yoga mat or a dance mat, and they can get that energy out in different ways. So again, they're not trying to, they're basically trying to get their needs met, but it's not always in a way that's helpful. So again, we want to find ways that they can have their needs met, but in a way that's okay with us, the environment, and themselves. If they're banging their head, for example, we're going to have to also keep them safe in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is, if we are talking about a home environment, right, where we have a limited number of children, but let's see in a classroom setup, how can one overcome these kind of challenges when it's a mixed age group? We know in Montessori we learn that we have to step in just before the chaos begins, right? But many a times either the educator is engaged with some other child and they might have missed noticing the chaos, or they are just unaware of what this chaos is going to be or how it looks like. So they have no idea, and that is where the chaos begins, and then they get overwhelmed. So how can you, what are the suggestions that you can give for such spaces where they can understand the chaos and help and support these children in a mixed age group and a larger group?
Okay, well, the nice thing about Montessori classrooms is you have older children and younger children, which means that if you are busy with another child, then you could say, oh, John, could you go and help such and such? I see that he's dropped the water. And so you could get an older child to help a younger child mop up. In the big picture, sometimes we're just reacting to the fires. So something spills and we quickly run over to help that. And then this child has pushed that child, and it seems to kind of like snowball into one thing and after the next. And I've had one of these classes, even with the parents in the space, where it's just kind of like some children just seem to bump up against each other in a certain personality clash. And so I just said to the families, I'm going to observe today. I'm going to see what happens, because at the moment, just this combination of children is an interesting combination, and we want to see how we can work with them so everyone can have their needs met. And so when I observed, I could sit on my chair and write what was happening, and I could see there was two children coming into a situation, and I'd be able to, step in even maybe before an interaction happened, or I could see. So anyway, all that happened was that I got off my chair 4 times the whole class, and I was able to step in kindly and clearly in these moments, and chaos didn't come out. So sometimes when you're having a chaotic kind of moment, it's actually best to step back and observe so that you can have actually a better sense of everybody's needs and to be more proactive. But I definitely think that with older children and younger children, don't overlook that the younger children are going to learn from the older ones. And then you can also look at which areas of the classroom are the most chaotic. Do I need to put out less pieces? Do I need to set up a space where the younger children can concentrate with, maybe less pieces? So in our classroom, we have like a bowl with 20 pieces. And I see some of the younger children just, throwing them on the floor. But if I'm nearby and I give them 1 piece at a time, then they really can concentrate and put each peg into the pegboard. But if you're not, as in a Montessori educator with many children, then you may not be able to give them that one-on-one care. So maybe I just set up a smaller board for that age group so that they can have success with the activity, and the older children can, work on something bigger in another area of the classroom.
Yeah, I love the suggestion. Actually, we have one of our audience, Malika. She is saying, ma'am, humble request, instead of discussing the points, Malika, could you, just unmute yourself and ask your query, please.
Ma'am, this is Malika from Tamil Nadu.
Yeah,
hi,
Hello.
ma'am. Yeah, I would like to see the classroom setup, how you are going to handle the children in different age in the same classroom.
So she's asking if you have any reference, image to show how, children of mixed age group are working with different activities in a classroom environment. Is that correct, Malika? Is this what you're asking for?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can pull up some photos really fast for you.
Yeah, I'll just allow you to share
my screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to help. Let's see. Okay. Oh. Sorry, everyone. Share screen. Okay. Okay, so this is my classroom, and I have children here from 14 months to 3 years in the class. And on one shelf, you'll see the puzzles, for example. And on the left-hand side of the shelf, it's easier, and it always moves from easiest to hardest across the shelf. So if a young child is having difficulty, goes straight over to the puzzle with all of the little houses on it, and that's more difficult and they're not having any success, then I can show them the one that's easier to do. So that's also one way to do it, is have easiest to hardest on one shelf, and then they can go back to have one of the easier activities in that space. While I've got this screen open, I'll show you some of the other areas. This is like our language corner, and again, this is set up so that on the top shelf is just objects. With the suitcase, there's things that they can travel with and clothing that they can put on that's related to the season. Then there's camping things that are just objects, things that they can go camping with, and they're learning the language around it. And then on the top right, there's like a basket of office equipment with a picture that's exactly the same. And then on the bottom shelves, there's ones that are similar. So that again, it goes from easiest to hardest. So in one area, there's kind of a mix. Then there's areas that children can use for any age. So this is our music area. and that's one way of doing it as well. Again, the book corner has books. Some of them have very simple words and some of them have more complicated things. In my art corner, I have the scribbling activity, the Play-Doh with the younger children, and then they move to cutting, some gluing and all those kind of things as well. So there's hard and easy activities there. I have some gross motor movement that can be used for any age group, which is a climbing wall there and some stairs for them to learn to climb and the pickler triangle. And then I just close this one. I just need to open one more screen to show you. I have one area of the classroom that's for older children. Oh, there's the share. And so this has some preliminary things that is for like the older children. So in that part of the classroom, the younger children don't tend to come over there, or they come over and it's too hard for them. So they don't find any challenge in that area, and so they move on anyway. So that's hopefully gives you some visuals as well to some of the things that we were talking to.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. And Simone, you have beautiful environment. I must tell you that it's so beautiful, aesthetic, appealing for children, and that's what young children need. That inspires them to go and work with the materials. So you have such a lovely setup. How do I remember you in the beginning of our session, you were just talking about when you were exploring school for your children, and when you entered in, you saw the space. You were saying that you saw the space and you were like, if they have maintained their space so beautifully, I'm sure they'll take care of my children as well, right? So when you invite parents to your community, obviously they'll be coming for a campus visit. What are the important aspects that you take care of while communicating with these parents? That is the question one. And the second question is, once these parents associate with you, what are the suggestions you give them so that there is a complementing collaboration between family and the school environment?
Yeah, so when they come to the space, honestly, I feel like the classroom, a Montessori classroom, sells itself. It's so attractive and beautiful and inviting. So I always take care of the space because I want it to be as beautiful as possible for the children. So it's not a day where it kind of looks messy or looks unkempt. That's just how it looks every day, because I never think of it as cleaning the classroom. I think of it as, I just want to make it as beautiful as possible for the kids. And I get excited when I put out an activity that's new and that we're exploring together and that kind of thing. So I think the enthusiasm for the classroom, it passes on to the families that visit. Then the way that I speak with the families as well, if they have a question, even if I think it's a silly question, I never let on that it's a silly question, because it's not a silly question. I look at them just like I do with the children. It's just something that they don't know yet. And so I'm happy to show them how respectful we are as Montessori adults to them. I think they feel that safety, that they feel respected, that it's a safe place to ask, that we also make it very inviting to any type of child and any type of family, because if they think it's only for children who can sit still and work quietly, or it's only for rich children, or it's only for white children, or it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be available and as accessible as possible to everyone. So I think they're really important principles to make them realize as well. And what else do I want to show them in that visit? It depends. Like I do, the way that I introduce families to my classroom is I have a introductory evening every 6 months. And so then I explain also like the Montessori approach and what these freedom and limits might look like, and what does the absorbent mind, and why do we do what we do. And I also give them, 10 minutes to explore the classroom themselves and how they experience it. So it's a very hands-on experience for them as well. So that's something that I love doing. And then the collaborating, that's why I have a parent-child class, to be honest, because I think that if you start with the children before they went into the 3 to 6 program and they already understand the principles because they've come to the play group along with their child, then I get an opportunity to model like in those 2-hour classes, how I interact with the children, how I set a kind and clear limit, how I spark their curiosity. If they're asking questions all the time, I can say, oh, that's a good question. I wonder what you think, and I can model those things. I can have a handout that they can practice. They can learn from other families that are coming, because the parents that have been coming for longer can teach the parents who haven't been coming for long. It's like really a Montessori experience. But if you didn't have the opportunity to have a parent-child program, then educating them with newsletters, with, work evenings where they can, have these interactive experiences. And I think sometimes, just like when I wrote the books, I wanted them to be very practical, because they're the questions that parents have, and families have. And so sometimes we want to teach them, for example, about something that's important to us as Montessori educators, like a session on practical life. But it's a great topic, but I'd rather also do a topic as well on how to get kids to cooperate, something like that, so that you're actually also teaching them about all aspects of how Montessori could apply in the home, I guess. And it's a collaboration. And what I love about working with families is you see them growing alongside their children. So they might come in with no information, and they might only come away with a little bit more information, but you accept that's where the family got to in your class. And there'll be other people in your families who come to your school who will change the way that they parent, who change the way that they live, and it has a much bigger impact. And you just meet everyone where they're at.
Yeah, it resonates so much with me, because I'm also a Montessori parent. And I remember when I put my daughter in a Montessori school, I was just a Montessori parent and not an educator, but I would attend these sessions, these workshops conducted by the school. And every time, even if the topics were repetitive, I would definitely attend those workshops. Why I did was, I realized that it reiterated, and every time the concepts that were told, I always realized that there was always something new that I learned. Even though the topics were repetitive, there was something new every time that I attended those workshops. I learned from those, workshops. And it was a brilliant experience for me. So I totally understand. And over the years, I realized that as a Montessori parent and educator, yes, we definitely pass on our experiences to these new people, new parents who are coming, because there are so many parents with so many anxieties, and especially because the traditional way of schooling is very different from this Montessori way of, educating, right? So
Yes.
Parents come with a lot of inhibitions and doubts, and many people understand it is an alternative method of learning, and they do not understand what it means. So though they put their children, but they have many questions. So as Montessori parents, as established Montessori parents, I totally relate to what you're saying. We definitely pass on our experience, and we share our examples of our children, and that gives them that confidence. So yes, this is a chain, and I think it's important for every parent and educator to continue this chain, and that is how the world is going to change as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's lovely conversation going on with you, Simone. I'm so enjoying your insights. Really, I must tell you, the suggestions that you are giving are so fantastic, and we are actually talking about new things so far. So we touched upon the collaboration with the parents, and we also touched upon the psychological and physical implications in children. So many parents have this common question about how to meet children's emotional need in this competitive world. How would you answer this?
I think that particularly like in a place like India, you have this pressure, right, don't you, that they're still going to have to get into the highest university and all of those kind of things. And so it takes a lot of trust to see your child to develop. And I think that's why starting from birth is really powerful, because if you just take it 1 year at a time, it's kind of not as scary as saying we're taking off the wheels and they're going to do whatever they like at school and you're not in control. If you start Montessori when they're a baby and you see the child by themselves, commando crawl over to reach something that they were trying to get to rather than doing it for them, and there's a big smile on their face. Or even when a child claps themselves because they're so pleased and you've never clapped them at all, it just shows like how pleased they are. Then you start to do that with a toddler who can go and get themselves a glass of water and pour water and drink it and then put it in the kitchen, where it's meant to go when they're finished. And then the preschooler who is able to pack their own bag and take it to their preschool, and they're so pleased because they get to put in maybe their drink bottle and a change of clothes and all the things that they're going to need in their little day. And they carry it so proudly on their back, a little backpack that's the same size as theirs. And then the school age kids who already make their own lunches rather than us doing everything for them. And they eat it because they know what their stomach wants for lunch, not what I think their stomach needs for lunch. And I don't just give them free rein in the fridge. I have maybe a shelf that's set out that has like all the things that would be okay for them to make for their lunch. And so it kind of scaffolds on, and we start to see their independence, and you think these children are capable, and yes, they may not be rote learning like they are doing in a traditional school, but they're learning so much more. And if they're learning all these facts because they're so curious about the world around them that they can't stop learning and they love learning. So I think that's probably the easiest way for us where it's basically us not being scared of the competitive world. The child's going to be fine. It's just us feeling okay with it. I think one thing that people also say is like, what about these Montessori children in the real world where, people aren't always so kind and that kind of thing? And I do think that Montessori children are quite resilient in general, because they know themselves. And if someone gets angry at them, they may be upset, but we're also a safe place that they can say it didn't go their way. And we're teaching them that, how to calm themselves back down and how to co-regulate with us. And then over time, they'll be able to self-regulate. So that's another part of that question as well. And to trust that Montessori isn't going to make I think I used to say a lot, well, the Google guys turned out great. And I'd pick out, people who are famous who did really well. But actually success for Montessori means your child developing to their greatest potential and allowing them. So it's actually not making everyone a great lawyer or everyone a great doctor or everyone a great Google guy. It's actually your child might become the best version of themselves, and that means that they're a beautiful farmer and they're going into permaculture farming. And another person who might want to go into government and they become like the best person who, cleans the streets or arranges for the streets to be cleaned or cares in that way. And so it's letting go of what we think of success and actually waiting to see how the child reveals themselves and being their guide along the way.
That's so beautifully explained, Simone. I completely agree with what you're saying. It's not the children, but it's us. And many a times I have to explain parents because they are like, what different are you doing? Especially because I work with children who are very young. So toddlers, right? So their parents are like, what will these children learn at this age? And I keep telling them, what is the benchmark? What is the yardstick for you for success? If it is money, if it is position, if it is, the designation that the child or the degrees that the child has qualified in, then why do we have so many, accidents in terms of committing mental health problems, right? Like depression and so many other mental issues. Why is this happening? Only because even though they have achieved a yardstick in this physical world, when it comes to their emotional needs, it is not met. And why has it not met? Because in early years, the only emphasis was given to their physical aspect of development, whether it is academics, whether they are great in sports, or, that's it. And not really what the child really needs at that age. So I completely agree with what you are saying. We as parents have to change our perspective about what our children at this age really need and support them accordingly. So
and just also to talk about the emotional education that children in Montessori school get. It's like, I find it interesting that there's a lot of people who are now adding these emotional intelligence programs into their school, but it's been built into Montessori education 100 years ago, in 1907, Dr. Montessori opened her first Montessori school. And teaching children how to have self-discipline, how to walk around someone else's mat and, to be able to control themselves, to put something back when they're finished and to wait their turn. And all of those things about living in the community has helped them build up their emotional capability, as well as, you know, when they've melted down and the the Montessori parent or the Montessori educator is there, not to say don't worry about it, but to say, okay, I can see you're having a hard time, and, you know, for passing on our wisdom about emotional intelligence. And yeah, I think it's really important what you say about mental health as well.
Yes, yes, very, very true. So Simone, it's great talking to you. I know you have only 10 minutes left. You had a 1 hour time span. So we'll open up to, question and answer session for our audience. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. You can put your queries in the chat box as well. Yes, Livia. Livia has a question. Yeah, please, Livia, go ahead.
Simone, may I call you Simone?
Of course.
Okay. It's not a question. I am a primary teacher. I'm sorry, I have a cold, and I'm an elementary teacher as well. But my heart has always been with the assistance to infancy. I think even the title assistance to infancy touches my heart as you promote the coming of humans. And that, as an elementary teacher, I go back in history and I worship the floor you walk on. I think that toddler teachers walk on water. What the work you do in your books are extremely helpful. I read your books and they are practical. I think sometimes Montessori is written in the language that is a little more challenging if you don't have the training. And what I liked the most was that you wrote to the public. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of us who follow on the footsteps of the assistance to infancy. So thank you so much. I teach at a toddler all the way to middle school in Atlanta, Georgia, in the U.S. And we feel the pressure. Society's pressure is not just in India that we have that. We are surrounded by other schools. So the work with parents is of essence. In your books, help us a lot. So thank you. Thank you so much for your work.
Oh, you're welcome. It's really interesting that you say that as well, is that I do think that in a way everyone should do a 0 to 3 training before they even work, like in elementary, because with a toddler, you can't force them to do something that they don't want to do. And so you have to find a way. If we need them to do something and they want to do this, then how do we get them to intersect and help them work together? And it's the same with the elementary child who might be avoiding an area that they don't like. It's our grace and creativity to come up with a way that makes it interesting, or for them to understand it using their skills. So hats off to you as well, because I think in some ways we can trust our child more easily that they're going to develop at their own pace, but you have the pressure from the parents, like, my child's not learning to read, or when are they going to do the mathematics and things. So we all have different pressures. But I also think as well, maybe it's useful for people who are on the call, Livia, you could give your experience, is that sometimes people think, they can do whatever they like in an elementary class. And they do, but they actually also they really have to keep a journal and keep track. How in your class do you keep track of what they're working on?
Yeah, we use, we call work journals, which is recording time of the beginning of a lesson or a follow-up work in the end. And we have conferences where that is a teacher-student conference.
Yes.
But the groundwork is done by assistants to infancy and primary teachers. And when they come, so I think the the conduit, and having them and going through those 3-year cycles is beautiful. And we get to see the work that, like Montessori, we build upon the work, the child builds upon the work done before. As teachers, as guides, we do the same. So it's delightful. I've been in this profession for quite some time, and it's still I'm still in awe with what children can do and succeed. And you're right about when the environment fosters that, in the expectation, and the redirection happens, the sky's the limit.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us. That's beautiful.
Well, my pleasure. I am the one humbled to be here today with all of you.
Thank you, Lydia. So we have another question from Jenny Joseph. She's asking, why do toddlers or young primary children bite other children? Is it connected in some way with the process of development of language, or is it just a teething period?
That's a really good question, Jenny. And based on observation, we have to look at why a child's biting. And there can be both of those things, is that sometimes they don't have the words to express themselves. And so the child might be working quietly and someone else comes up to them and wants to take over their work. And instead of saying, that's my work, they bite the child next to them. That can be some of the case. It can be that they might be growing some molars, and so they're wanting to tease on something. It might be that they're hungry. It might be that they're trapped in a corner and feeling kind of they can't get out of the space, and they don't have the words to say, excuse me, I need to go around you. And so they bite. So it takes a lot of skill to be able to observe and to be able to step in kindly and clearly. And also, even though they're not good at like saying sorry or those kind of things, we can show them how we make amends. So once everyone has calmed down, because usually a child is bitten, they're not in a regulated state, so we have to help them to calm down. And then if the other child's hurt, we get a wet cloth for them, say, look, can you see how they're hurt? We're going to go and get a wet cloth, and we're going to see if our friend's better, or would you like to get a tissue? And we involve them in helping make it better. But yeah, there's no one reason why they're biting, but it can be many different reasons.
Yeah. And we have another question from Demi. She's asking, how is the Montessori training transforming the educator to walk the talk?
Demi, that's also a great question. And honestly, I feel like I describe it as like layers of an onion, right? So you leave your Montessori training, you think, I've been transformed and I know this. And we have a whole part of our training about the preparation of the adult, how we need to be humble, how we need to prepare ourselves beautifully, how we need to have the education as well, like to understand the development of the child. And there's so many aspects of it. And then you actually get to work with real children, and you just keep coming up against your own things to keep up leveling and to see, oh, why was I irritated by that child? That's actually work that I need to do on myself, not about the child. It's showing me where I need to grow, and to have enormous compassion for ourselves, just as we have enormous compassion for the children. And then another year, I learned nonviolent communication, which I felt was such a nice thing that complemented my Montessori training, which really helped me to be able to set kind and clear limits with children, because my Montessori training goes a long way, but it doesn't always give us exactly the words that we used. So then I learned some nonviolent communication, and then I love Ayurvedic living practices, and I feel like that's a really beautiful way for us to also be a really calm Montessori guide, because if we kind of do Abhyanga and eat nourishing food and to see what else we're digesting in our life, then we can also be a more regulated teacher to hold space. So there's all of these parts of Montessori training and then practice that helps us to start to walk the talk.
Absolutely. That's very true. And yes, I have experienced a similar journey. I'm sure, Demi, you are asking the question because probably you have also gone through this kind of journey where you do the course and then you come on the floor and you're like, oh my God.
No, actually not. I'm just about to embark on the journey. So I have heard the transformation that happens with the individual, and I'm glad you mentioned the inner work you have to do. So I'm getting prepared now.
Yeah, and it's really exciting too, because there's also one part of the training that you'll find harder than the rest. So for some people, it's writing the albums. For some people, it's doing the observations. And whatever bit you find the hardest, that's the bit you transform the most. So my favorite thing to teach adults now is observation. And that was the thing that I hated the most in my training. But I needed all 250 hours of observation before I really feel like I could see through the child's eyes. I could see the child fresh every day. And I felt like that helped me try and make a biggest transformation during my Montessori training. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It has been
Good luck.
inspiring.
Oh, great. I can't wait. It's amazing. You'll love it.
Thank you.
And wish you good luck, Devi.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's 10:30 here, and I think Simone is also now short of time, right, Simone? She has to leave now. So we are going to end our session for today, and I'm so thankful and grateful for having you, Simone, at our platform, talking about Montessori journey and your insight, sharing with us. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all of you, those who are in India and in any part of the country, world, sharing and sharing your experiences and learning from us. We all are learning from each other. Thank you for being here. You have a wonderful weekend ahead, and yeah, see you soon again with our next session.
Thanks so much for having us, Madhuri, and thank you for all your wisdom and for hosting us on this platform. It's so lovely to connect with you all. Have a great weekend, everyone.